Blazing fire still burned in the ruined camp. The smoke rose into the sky, carrying the bitter smell of death. Leora knelt in the dirt, her hands trembling as she pressed them against the chest of her fallen partner. His eyes were empty now, staring at nothing. She whispered his name, her voice broken and full of pain. She had fought with him for years, through endless battles, and now he was gone. Her heart felt like it had been ripped out, and nothing in the galaxy could replace what she had lost. Boots crunched on the ground behind her. She didn't turn. She already knew the sound. Human boots. The humans had arrived late, too late to save him. Her hatred burned like fire in her chest. She clenched her teeth as the shadow fell over her. "Leora," a calm voice said, "I'm sorry." She turned her head slowly. A human stood there, tall, with rough features and tired eyes. His name was Ethan. She had heard of him before, a soldier who fought too hard, who always came back covered in scars. The commanders had decided he would be her new partner, her replacement. Rage boiled in her chest. "Don't you dare," she hissed. "Don't you dare stand where he stood. You are nothing like him." Ethan did not argue. He only lowered his head for a moment, as if showing respect to the dead alien warrior. Then he looked at her again, his voice steady. "The war is not waiting for us. We have a mission." Her claws dug into the dirt. She wanted to strike him, to make him bleed for daring to replace what could never be replaced. But the sound of blasters echoed in the distance, sharp and deadly. The enemy was moving again. She wiped her tears, grabbed her weapon, and rose to her feet. "Stay out of my way, human," she spat. The forest ahead was dark, its twisted trees glowing faintly with alien light. The air was heavy with tension. Ethan walked behind her, silent, steady, always watching. She hated how calm he seemed. She hated the quiet strength in his eyes. Every step reminded her of the partner she had lost, the partner who had laughed, who had fought by her side, who had died screaming under enemy fire. And now this human dared to walk where he once walked. The night grew colder as they pushed forward. Strange shadows moved between the trees. Leora could hear whispers in the wind, voices that sounded like the dead. She tried to ignore them, but grief made her weak. For a moment she stumbled, her knees nearly giving way. Ethan reached out, his hand brushing her arm. "Don't touch me," she snapped, jerking away. He didn't answer. His hand dropped back to his side, and he kept walking. His silence only fueled her anger. She wanted him to fight back, to yell, to show weakness. But he gave her nothing. The sound of metal scraping against stone filled the air. From the shadows, glowing red eyes appeared. Enemy scouts. Their claws gleamed in the dim light as they hissed and spread out, surrounding the pair. Leora raised her weapon, her heartbeat racing. "Stay behind me," she growled. Ethan didn't move. "We fight together." She almost laughed at the word. Together. He thought he could take her partner's place, thought he could fight like him, die like him. She wanted him to fail. She wanted him to see that humans were fragile, weak, not worthy. The first enemy charged, leaping from the trees. Leora spun, slashing her blade across its throat, spilling black blood onto the dirt. Another came from the left. Ethan fired his rifle, the blast hitting straight through its chest. He didn't even flinch as it fell at his feet. More came, faster, screaming in their alien tongue. Leora fought with fury, each strike fueled by grief and rage. Ethan fought beside her, moving with sharp precision. Their backs touched for a moment as they were surrounded, his steady breathing contrasting with her ragged gasps. "You're reckless," she snarled between swings. "You're distracted," he shot back. The words stung because they were true. Her pain clouded her judgment, and for a heartbeat, one of the enemies slipped past her defense. She braced for the strike, but Ethan stepped in, blocking with his rifle, shoving the creature back before blasting it point blank. She froze just for a second, staring at him. His eyes locked on hers, calm even in the chaos. "Do you want to survive," he asked firmly, "or do you want to hate me until you die?" Her breath caught in her throat. She hated the question. She hated him for asking it. She turned away, slicing another enemy across the chest. But deep inside, the words burned. The last scout hissed and fled back into the trees, vanishing into the shadows. Silence returned to the forest, broken only by Leora's heavy breathing. She stood with her weapon dripping in blood, her chest rising and falling, her rage barely under control. Ethan checked his rifle, then looked at her again. "This isn't over. They'll be back." Leora stared at him with narrowed eyes, her body trembling with hate, grief, and confusion all at once. "If you think you can replace him," she whispered coldly, "you are already dead." But somewhere deep inside her heart, a seed of doubt had been planted, a seed she refused to admit was there. The enemy had fled, but the war had just begun, and whether she liked it or not, the human would not leave her side. The ground was wet with mist, and the trees around them seemed to whisper as they moved forward. Leora walked fast, her eyes scanning the shadows, refusing to slow down for the human behind her. Ethan followed in silence, his rifle ready, his footsteps steady. She hated the sound of him there, hated that every time she turned her head, she saw him instead of the partner she had lost. The silence was broken by the sudden shriek of enemy drones. Sharp lights cut through the fog, and mechanical wings buzzed as the machines dived down. Leora jumped forward, her blade flashing as she struck one out of the air. Sparks burst in the dark, but another drone came from behind her, its claws ready to tear. Ethan fired, blasting it to the ground before it could touch her. She spun on him with anger, her eyes burning. "I told you not to cover me," she shouted. "You nearly died," he said flatly, his voice calm, unshaken. "I don't need you," she hissed. She swung her weapon again, smashing another drone, her movements sharp with fury. Ethan didn't answer. He just kept fighting, his shots fast, precise, each one striking true. The machines fell one by one, but Leora refused to look at him. She didn't want to see him strong, didn't want to feel his presence covering her blind spots, didn't want the reminder that he was not her partner. But he fought like one. The battle ended as quickly as it had started, the broken machines burning on the ground. The air smelled of smoke and metal. Leora's chest heaved with rage and exhaustion. Ethan reloaded his weapon, his expression calm as ever. "You're reckless," he said finally. Her head snapped toward him, her voice sharp as a blade. "And you're unwanted." His eyes narrowed, but he didn't raise his voice. "I don't care what you think of me. I only care that we both live through this." She turned away, her claws tightening around her weapon. The forest seemed endless, and the silence between them felt heavier than the mist. They walked without speaking, but Ethan's words lingered in her ears, irritating her more than the buzzing of drones. Hours later, they came across strange marks on the ground, circles burned into the soil, symbols written in blood. Leora crouched, tracing the lines with her claws, her body tensed. These were not random. They were signs of an enemy trap, an ambush waiting to happen. She glanced at Ethan. He was already watching, his eyes scanning the tree line. His calmness made her furious. "You don't even understand what this means," she growled. "I understand enough," he said. "They want us dead." His voice was steady, but his gaze was sharp, alert. He wasn't stupid. He wasn't careless. She hated that he wasn't easy to dismiss. As they moved again, the forest grew darker. Every branch seemed ready to snap. Every shadow seemed alive. Ethan stayed close, not too far behind her, always ready. Leora's steps were fast and angry, but deep down she felt his presence like a shield at her back. The sound of movement suddenly surrounded them, figures slipping between the trees, whispering in a tongue that made the air feel colder. Leora lifted her blade, ready to strike, but the voices echoed from every direction. Ethan's voice was calm, but firm. "They're circling us." She refused to admit he was right, even as her heart raced. The whispers grew louder, the shadows closing in. She tightened her grip, her teeth bared. She would not run. She would never show weakness. Not to the enemy, and not to the human beside her. The first figure stepped into the faint light, its eyes glowing like coals, its weapon dripping with venom. Leora raised her blade high, her breath sharp, her hatred burning. She wanted to prove to herself that she didn't need him, didn't need anyone. Ethan's rifle clicked as he raised it, his eyes fixed on the target. "Together," he said firmly, his tone not a request, but a command. Her heart twisted with rage and grief, but before she could refuse, the enemy rushed forward and the night exploded into battle. The forest was endless, its twisted roots crawling like veins across the ground, glowing faintly under the dim, alien sky. Leora walked in silence, her shoulders tense, her blade drawn. She did not speak to the human, did not even look at him. Every step he took behind her was an insult, a reminder of what she had lost. Ethan followed without complaint, his eyes always scanning the trees, his rifle steady in his hands. They moved through the ruins of an old battlefield. Shattered armor, burned out machines, and bones half buried in the dirt told the story of those who had fought here before. Leora's chest tightened as she recognized the markings of her own people among the dead. She stepped carefully, her claws brushing against the metal plate of one fallen soldier. Memories returned like fire in her chest, and her steps slowed. Ethan noticed but said nothing. He kept his distance, watching her without interfering. When a loose stone nearly shifted under her foot, his hand shot forward, steadying her for just a breath. She ripped herself away, her glare sharp enough to cut. "Don't touch me." He nodded once and stepped back. No anger, no argument. His silence was worse than words, calm and heavy, like he had already accepted her hatred. The air grew colder as the path narrowed. Strange roots pulsed faintly with light, and the sound of water dripped somewhere far away. Leora's ears twitched. Something moved in the shadows. She froze, blade ready, but Ethan raised a hand. His eyes were fixed on a low ridge above them. A sniper's scope gleamed for only a second before fading back into darkness. Leora crouched, heart pounding. She hadn't seen it. If not for him, the shot would have taken her head clean off. Her pride burned hotter than her fear. She wanted to scream at him, to deny his usefulness, but she couldn't form the words. Instead, she pushed forward faster, determined not to let him see the weakness in her. Hours passed in that silence, broken only by the crunch of boots and the whisper of alien wind. Ethan moved with patience, his steps always careful, his eyes catching traps before she did. A hidden wire glimmered across the path. He pulled her back before she triggered it. A pit disguised by leaves yawned open just ahead. He stopped her with a single word: wait. Every time he saved her, she hated him more. But every time he saved her, something inside her cracked. She was supposed to despise him, yet his actions kept building a wall between her anger and her heart. They stopped to rest near the ruins of an outpost. The walls were covered in scorch marks, the air thick with the smell of old smoke. Leora sat with her back to the cold stone, her eyes fixed on the ground. Ethan sat across from her, cleaning his rifle in silence. She couldn't bear it anymore. "Why don't you speak?" She snapped. His hands didn't stop moving. He answered calmly, "You don't want me to." His tone was even, not mocking, not cold, just simple truth. That made her angrier. She wanted him to fight back, to fail, to break under the weight of her rage. But he didn't. Night fell heavy over the ruins. The stars were hidden behind thick alien clouds, and the shadows stretched long across the broken ground. Leora lay awake, staring at the sky she couldn't see. Beside her, Ethan stayed watch, his eyes sharp, his rifle ready. His silhouette was still, his breathing steady, as if he was part of the night itself. The wind carried a faint sound, a metallic hum, followed by low voices. Leora rose quickly, her hand on her blade. Ethan's hand went to his rifle, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the horizon. They moved together this time, side by side, without even thinking. In the darkness ahead, they found it, a broken data pod buried in the rubble. Its faint blue light flickered, showing fragments of recorded images. Leora crouched, claws shaking as she pressed the activation switch. The projection flickered to life. Her partner's final moments spilled out in front of her. He was fighting, surrounded, screaming orders, until a sharp blast cut through his chest. But it wasn't the enemy that fired. It was from behind, from their own ranks. The recording ended in static, leaving only silence. Leora's breath caught. Her claws trembled. Her hatred for the human vanished for only a second, replaced by a deeper, sharper pain. Betrayal. Her people had killed him, not weakness, not chance. She felt the ground shift beneath her feet, her world breaking apart. Ethan said nothing. He just stood near, his face unreadable, his silence heavier than words. For the first time, Leora did not push him away. She sat frozen, staring at the fading light, her heart bleeding with the truth she never wanted to know. The flickering blue light faded into darkness, leaving only the sound of Leora's uneven breathing. Her claws dug into the dirt as if she could tear the truth out of the ground. Her partner's death had not been a tragedy of war. It had been betrayal. Her own kind had left him to die. Her chest ached as if the wound had opened inside her all over again. She wanted to scream, but no sound left her throat. Ethan stood a few steps away, his face calm in the shadows. He did not move closer, did not speak. His silence wrapped around her like a heavy cloak. He could have said something, anything, but he didn't. Somehow that restraint stung worse than words. The night was colder now. Leora sat on the broken stones, her shoulders trembling, though she would never admit it. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let tears fall where a human could see. Ethan leaned against the ruined wall, his rifle across his knees, eyes scanning the horizon. The firelight from a broken pod flickered between them, painting their faces in sharp light and shadow. Hours passed. She did not speak, and neither did he. Yet she felt his presence like a steady pulse in the darkness. Always there, always waiting, never demanding. At last her voice cracked into the silence, bitter and sharp. "Say it. Say humans are stronger. Say you were right." His head turned slightly. His voice was quiet, even. "I don't need to." The simplicity of his answer pierced her more deeply than if he had shouted victory. She looked away quickly, her teeth clenched. Rage and grief tangled inside her chest until she could not tell which was heavier. A low rumble shook the ground. Both of them froze. From the trees, a red glow spread like fireflies gathering. Mechanical footsteps echoed, dozens of them, metal crushing stone. The enemy war machines were moving, their heavy frames lit with crimson light, their weapons humming with deadly energy. Leora rose to her feet, forcing the pain away, gripping her blade with both hands. Her heart raced as she counted the lights. Too many. Far too many. Ethan stood beside her, rifle ready, his body steady like a wall. "They've cut off our escape," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes sharpened with focus. She spat into the dirt. "Good. Let 'em come." The machines emerged from the darkness, towering figures of steel, their faces covered by glowing masks, their claws dripping with plasma fire. Their voices screeched in a metallic chorus, speaking a language that sounded like grinding metal. The ruins around them glowed brighter with every step of the machines. Leora's chest tightened. She had faced many battles, but never with a human at her side. Every instinct screamed that he was too fragile, that he would fall quickly and leave her alone again. Yet when she glanced at him, he was not afraid. His rifle was raised, his stance unshaken. "Stay behind me," she snapped, though her voice shook more than she wanted. "No," Ethan said simply. "We stay alive together or not at all." The war machines screeched again and charged, shaking the ground beneath their weight. The ruins exploded into chaos, stone crumbling, fire bursting, metal claws tearing through the night. Leora swung her blade in a wide arc, sparks flying as she sliced through steel plating. Ethan's rifle thundered beside her, each shot precise, each blast ripping holes through metal limbs. The machines pressed closer, their numbers endless, their shadows stretching high. Leora's arms ached, her breath ragged, her rage pushing her forward even as exhaustion clawed at her. For every machine she cut down, two more stepped into the firelight. Ethan fought like a man who had nothing to lose. His movements were sharp, efficient, his eyes locked on the enemy, never faltering. He covered her blind side again and again, always there when she staggered, always steady when she wavered. The ruins shook as the largest machine stepped forward, its body 3 times their height, its chest glowing with the power of a weapon, strong enough to tear down a fortress. The glow brightened, a hum building in the air like thunder before lightning. Leora froze for a fraction of a second, her eyes wide. Ethan moved first. He shoved her back against the stone, his own body shielding hers. The weapon fired, a beam of pure energy ripping through the ruins. The blast tore apart stone and steel, shaking the ground. But when the dust cleared, Ethan still stood in front of her, his back smoking, his armor cracked. Her heart lurched in her chest. For the first time, she saw not a replacement, not a human weakness, but someone willing to burn to keep her alive. The machine screamed again, preparing for another strike. Leora gripped her blade tighter, her fury twisting into something new, something she could not name. This fight was no longer just survival. It was a storm that would either destroy them both or bind them together forever. Flames licked across the broken ruins, casting long shadows as the machines closed in. Leora's breath came sharp and heavy, her body aching, her wounds burning, but she refused to fall. Then the strike came, too fast, too brutal. A clawed arm cut across her side, and pain shot through her like fire. Her knees buckled, and blood seeped between her fingers as she pressed her hand to the wound. For the first time, her weapon nearly slipped from her grasp. Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. "Stay with me." His arm hooked around her waist before she could collapse. She shoved against him weakly, fury in her eyes even as her vision blurred. Uh, I don't need you, she snarled, but her words lacked strength. You're bleeding out, he said, his tone hard, unshaken. Without hesitation, he lifted her onto his back. She struggled, her claws digging into his armor, her pride screaming louder than the pain, but her body betrayed her. She was too weak to fight him off. The machines roared behind them, their heavy footsteps pounding closer. Ethan ran, his boots striking against broken stone, carrying her through fire and smoke. Blaster shots rained around them, shards of stone cutting across his face, sparks burning against his skin. He did not stop. He carried her as though her weight meant nothing, as though the fire could not touch him. Leora pressed her claws into his shoulders, her voice breaking between ragged breaths. Put me down. You'll die. He didn't answer. His breathing was rough but steady, his steps never slowing. Every movement was defiance, every stride an oath that he would not abandon her. Her hatred faltered, replaced by something she didn't want to feel, fear. Not fear of the machines, but fear of losing him too. Behind them, a machine's claw swung close, nearly slicing into Ethan's back. With a desperate move, he spun, firing his rifle one-handed, blowing the machine's head apart while still carrying her. The blast lit his face for a moment, and Leora saw the fire in his eyes, fierce, unyielding, alive. The path ended at a jagged cliff. Smoke rose from below, and broken structures jutted out like teeth. The machines closed in from every side, their shadows stretching long against the flames. Ethan set her down carefully, his body shielding hers. There's nowhere left, Leora whispered, her voice hoarse, her pride and fury stripped away, leaving only raw desperation. Ethan checked his weapon. The energy core was nearly empty, the light flickering weakly. He gave a low breath, then looked back at her, his expression calm, steady, as if nothing could break him. Then we fight here. Her chest twisted painfully. She had spent every step hating him, blaming him, rejecting him. Yet now, watching him stand against impossible odds, ready to burn himself out just to keep her alive, she felt something she had sworn she would never feel again. Trust. The machines screamed and charged, their glowing weapons lighting the ruins. Leora tightened her grip on her blade, forcing herself to stand despite the pain tearing through her body. Her voice trembled, but it was fierce when she spoke. Then we fight together. The storm of metal and fire crashed over them, and for the first time, Leora fought not to escape, not for vengeance, but because she could not let him fall. The machines came in a wave of fire and steel, their weapons cutting through the ruins like thunder, tearing the sky apart. Ethan shoved Leora behind a broken wall and turned back into the storm, his rifle blazing with desperate fury. Every shot struck true, but for every enemy that fell, two more advanced, their glowing eyes locking onto him. His armor was cracked, his face streaked with blood, but he didn't falter. He fought as if his body was nothing more than a tool to protect her. Leora pushed herself up, pain ripping through her side, but the sight of him fighting alone twisted something deep inside her. He wasn't her partner, wasn't the one she had lost, but in that moment he was willing to give everything, to burn out just to buy her one more breath. Rage and grief warred in her chest until finally she could no longer stay hidden. She staggered to her feet, gripping her blade so tightly her claws dug into the hilt. "Ethan," she shouted over the chaos. His head turned only for a second, his eyes fierce. "Go! Get out while you can!" He shook his head, his voice cutting sharp through the storm. "Not without you." The largest machine swung a burning claw down, and Ethan stepped into its path, his body braced like a wall. The impact threw him to the ground, his rifle skidding across the stones. The machine's chest glowed as it prepared a killing strike, the hum of its weapon rising like the roar of a storm. Ethan tried to stand again, blood running down his face, but his legs buckled. Leora's breath froze. She saw the choice in his eyes. He meant to let himself die so she could escape. The thought tore through her like fire. For so long, she had told herself she hated him, that she would never accept him, that humans were weak and unworthy. But now, watching him crawl to his feet despite the pain, she saw something stronger than any warrior she had ever known. He was willing to break himself, to burn away if it meant she could live. "No," she screamed, her voice echoing across the ruins. She threw herself forward, her blade glowing with raw fury as she slashed upward, cutting through the machine's glowing chest. Sparks erupted in a blinding flash, the war machine collapsing with a deafening crash. Ethan fell to his knees, gasping for breath, but his eyes lifted to her, filled with both surprise and something softer he didn't speak aloud. She grabbed his arm, hauling him up with strength she didn't know she had left. "You don't die for me," she growled, her face inches from his, her voice raw with emotion. "You fight with me." The machines shrieked again, more of them rushing forward. Leora and Ethan stood shoulder to shoulder now, their weapons raised, their bodies bruised and broken but unyielding. Her movements matched his rifle covering her blind spots, her blade clearing his path. For the first time, their rhythm was perfect, two warriors fighting as one. The ground shook with every step of the enemy, the night lit with fire and smoke, but together they carved a path through it. Leora's hatred was gone, burned away in the fire of his sacrifice. In its place was something new, something terrifying, something powerful. The last of the machines pulled back, regrouping in the distance, their glowing eyes watching, waiting to strike again. Ethan leaned heavily against the wall, his body shaking, but when he looked at her, there was no defeat in his eyes. Only defiance. Leora stood beside him, her blade dripping with sparks and ash. She breathed hard, her body trembling, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "If they want us, they'll have to take us both." The machines roared from the shadows, preparing their final assault. Side by side, human and alien braced for the storm, no longer enemies, but partners bound by fire and survival. The night tore open with fire as the last wave of machines advanced, their glowing eyes forming a ring of red around the ruins. Smoke hung heavy in the air, and the ground shook with every step they took. Ethan stood with his rifle raised, his breath ragged, his body bruised, but his stance unbroken. Beside him, Leora gripped her blade, her wounds aching, her pride stripped bare. For the first time, she looked at him not as a replacement, not as an intruder, but as a partner. The machines screamed, charging forward like a storm of metal and death. Ethan fired, his shots sharp and unrelenting, each blast tearing through armor. Leora's blade danced beside him, cutting, slashing, sparks exploding around her as she struck again and again. Their movements were no longer separate. Each step, each strike, flowed together like they had fought side by side for years. Ethan's rifle finally sputtered, the core drained, the light gone. He tossed it aside without hesitation and grabbed a fallen enemy's weapon, swinging it like a hammer, shattering steel skulls with raw strength. Leora's heart jolted at the sight. This human, who she had called weak, was fighting with the fury of 10 warriors. The largest machine roared, its body glowing like molten fire, towering above them. It raised its weapon, aiming to finish them both. Leora leapt first, her blade striking deep into its chest, but the machine's claw wrapped around her, squeezing until she cried out. Ethan roared, throwing himself onto the machine, his stolen weapon smashing down again and again until the claw loosened. He dragged her free, his own body taking the brunt of the machine's crushing blow. For a heartbeat, Leora thought she had lost him too. But Ethan staggered back to his feet, blood dripping from his mouth, his eyes still burning with defiance. He met her gaze and gave a rough smile, like as if to say he would not fall until she did. That smile tore her chest open in a way no blade ever could. Together, they struck one final time. Her blade pierced through the machine's heart as Ethan's strike crushed its core. The explosion lit the night, throwing them both to the ground. When the dust settled, silence spread across the battlefield. The machines lay broken, their glowing eyes fading into nothing. Leora lay gasping, her body aching, her vision blurred. She turned her head and saw Ethan beside her, barely conscious, but alive. His hand twitched, reaching toward her, not demanding, not forcing, only offering. For a moment she hesitated, then her claws slowly slipped into his hand. Her voice was weak but steady. "I was wrong about you, human." Ethan's lips curved into the faintest smile, his words quiet. "I wasn't here to replace him. I'm here to stand with you." The fire around them dimmed, the night falling quiet once more. Leora stared at him, the hatred that had once consumed her gone, replaced by something heavier, something she did not yet understand. For the first time since her partner's death, she felt she was not alone. The silence stretched, broken only by her whisper, barely audible over the crackle of dying flames. "Maybe I didn't lose a partner. Maybe I found another one." And in the darkness of a ruined battlefield, with smoke fading into the sky and their bodies broken but unbowed, an alien warrior and a human soldier lay side by side, bound not by duty, not by command, but by the fire they had survived together.